Hello everyone, welcome to the GeoEcologist. I am Dr. Krishnanand and you have been watching my videos on various topics of geography, environment, disaster management, and right now we are going with the series that is on hydrology. So if you have not watched the earlier videos, definitely you can go to the playlist section and look for the videos which we have done already. Now in today's session in hydrology, we are going to talk about something which is very interesting and very important. It's the Indian perspective of hydrology or the evolution of hydrology through the lenses of ancient, medieval, and modern India. And here we'll be making it very interesting through various facts, through various images, diagrams, maps. So do watch the video till the end and it's going to be very interesting. But don't forget to subscribe to our channel and please do share all these videos with others as well. So now let's discuss this idea of evolution of hydrology from Indian perspective. That is, in India, what happened right from ancient to medieval to modern and present. So evolution of hydrological knowledge, if you observe in India, is basically traced through the history of India alongside geographical knowledge and historical periods. So what we are going to do this understanding is from a perspective which is already discussed in a volume, that is hydrology in ancient India is a good reference for this, where you see this is published by National Institute of Hydrology in Roorkee, Uttarakhand. So if you want this book for yourself, you can take this book and read in details. But in this video, we are going to do some crisper things, shorter things, so that you have a better understanding in just say 15-20 minutes of time. So now let's understand this particular timeline which we are going to use for the evolutionary perspective from Indian perspective. So if you observe these early stages of human civilization, where we most properly talk about one thing, that is the Indus Valley civilization, the Bronze Age civilization, Indus Valley and Harappan, Mohenjo-daro and several other sites where we see there is a particular deep-rooted philosophy bringing to life lots of knowledge forms in the ancient. Same happened with hydrology as well, like other sciences. The roots are ancient. So if you observe this particular time period, this is the time period where the roots are supposed to be found. So if you observe 5 basic elements here, what is it? Fire, water, sky, wind, earth, all these things are deep rooted in terms of every subject that we manifest today. So what you observe, that ancient collections of the knowledge which are present in the Ved. If you say Vedas, so these are ancient texts where you will find a lot of information pertaining to every other science. So does hydrology. So if you observe, water cures fevers, glow. So this is something which is coming from 1500 before Common Era. So it means that the idea of water, especially in Vedic texts, and remember Indus Valley civilization, and further as we advance to the Ganga civilization and several others, you'll find these knowledge of water and water-based civilization. So water, of course, was the essence of the entire civilization. Hence, hydrological knowledge was the prime. So if you observe Atharva Veda, if you see one of the Vedas, here in 1100 to 900 before Common Era, it examines the knowledge of hydrology in terms of prayers, charms, spells, highlighting water as a remedial measure for various problems and diseases as well. So if you observe, the Indian perspective has to be brought in from the ancient to the modern. So if you look into this, the ancient Indians demonstrated a profound awareness. Remember, this is not just textual knowledge, it's practical knowledge, awareness about the significance of rainfall, seasonality, and hydrological factors for societal well-being. So not just the theoretical hydrology, but practical hydrology, applied hydrology you'll find from Indian perspective, which you see during the same time missing in the West, right? So throughout ancient India, natural entities, forces were worshipped as gods, right? Sun, earth, river, ocean, wind, water, they were the famous deities in the ancient, right? Like any other civilization. So if you see, notably, the king of these gods was Indra, who's supposed to be god of rain and thunder. So it seems more than mere coincidence that rain was the primal thing. It was very crucial in hydrological understanding. It was the most important hydrological variable. Hence you see that Indra being worshipped as the prime god during the Vedic and post-Vedic period. Now if you observe the ancient Indian scientists that we say, or you can say ancient Indian scholars. So who were these people? Remember Dhanvantri, Acharya Charak, Acharya Bharadwaj, Bhagbat, then you have Acharya Kanad, Sushruta, Brahmagupta, Aryabhat and Bhaskar, Patanjali, then you have Bodhyan, Nagarjun, Varahmihir, Kapil, Bhaskar, Chanakya. These were the names, and still these names keep reverberating around us when we talk about anything that was supposed to be scientific, isn't it? Whenever we say something is scientific coming from Indian science, we take one of these scholars or many of these scholars in their names. So their contribution is very important. Still, what we talk about is in terms of hydrological science and its evolution in India. So concept of water heated by sun, transforming it into vapor, rising to the sky within the air, and subsequently raining again. This is what we say is water cycle, cloud formation. This was ingrained in their thinking all the way back in the Vedic period and later Vedic period. So what you observe, according to their understanding, the combination of smoke, fire, air, three things. Smoke, fire, air played a role in cloud formation. Then what we say is, in modern times, aerosol, isn't it? So you observe these kind of things are there and was there. So roots are ancient, and the intricate relationship, if you want to understand, between natural elements and the ancient Indians' deep understanding of hydrological cycle, this is reflected in their lives practically. So if you observe ancient Indian history, when we talk about history, we talk about almost, if you observe this particular 1000 before common era, and from here we say almost 4 lakh year. Isn't it? So we say this is the prehistoric time period, from where we come to the age where you have Chalcolithic and then you have the Bronze Age civilization developing around the Indus Valley and Harappa. So here what we say is 2500 to 1500 before common era, which is subjective. Sometimes you'll see these dates fluctuate. But moreover, we say Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization is the root to all these knowledge that we have today. So what you observe in spatial context, it's not just geography that's important, that where it was located, but alongside geography, it epitomizes the level of development of science and understanding it practically in applied ways right from ancient times. So these scholars you should not forget. And now let's look into some of the important understandings of hydrology and its application in the ancient. So if you see Harappan civilization, and I'm sure you must have seen these images, the Great Bath, isn't it? So levels of technology used by Harappan people in terms of water management is evident in their planning that we have unearthed, archaeological surveys, right? So Great Bath is one such example. Tank design, waterproofing methods, steps on both sides. So you observe these kind of things, and you have a citadel, right? The granary at the top. So these things are there. Then if you observe, a dockyard was discovered at Lothal. Remember, dockyard means ship industry, travel, trade, all those things, and the understanding of tide alongside it, right? So not just the groundwater understanding, flow of river understanding, but also the oceanography understanding, isn't it? And you see the spill channel, as we can see in the image that I'll show you just now. So rock cut reservoirs built in Dholavira, and you have Manhar and Mansar, these two rivulets which are there. So if you observe, this is what we talk in Lothal. So this is one of the paintings which represents how the Lothal's idea of the dockyard was. Right? So you see, here is the channel and here is the dockyard, and you have this particular channel here, which is for extra water during high tide, right? It's still present, and you may visit and understand it for yourselves. Now come to the travel and route exchange, the idea of knowledge. So does it say that knowledge came from west to India, or the knowledge went from India to the west? Now this is debatable. So remember, most of the Western science, the West scholars, scientific understanding say that the knowledge accumulated around Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia and later Greeks and Romans, and this knowledge came to India. But there is another perspective that says that this particular Meluha, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, this particular Bronze Age civilization had the full-fledged knowledge of the urban planning, water structures, hydrology and several others, which actually flew to these particular Western civilizations, isn't it? So there is this particular viewpoint that the ancient was the root, and hence all the ancient civilizations through trade and cultures has some sort of similarity, right? So look into the Indian knowledge of hydrology. Where would you study it? So to study Indian knowledge of hydrology, you need to look into the works of these great scholars. So if you look into the Indian scriptures, I'm sure you have heard the names here. So Vedas, Arthashastra, Ashtadhyayi, and of course our great epics, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and also you have some other text that you should look into is particularly Meghmala, Brihad Samhita, right? All these are very important texts where you see hydrological knowledge, hydrological understanding of the ancient of India being there in the verses, in the understanding. So Vedic period is our benchmark from where we trace the evolution. So Vedic texts have hydrological cycle being represented, the processes like evaporation, condensation, stream flow, and this is what we talk about is engraved in these scriptures, in the texts. So if you look into the Vayu Puran, it talks a detail about the rainfall, its idea of orographic rainfall that we talk about in climatology. So convectional heating of the earth and evapotranspiration, all these things are there in the Vayu Puran or Vayu Mahapuran. Now the point is that Vedic texts other than Mauryan period texts also are very important, and one of the Mauryan period texts that you observe is Artha Shastra. Now Earth Shastra, because it's also about the political science, the governance, the rules and all those things, it's not just about these particular governance and polity thing, but it also has this scientific understanding of nature and its application to run a good government, right? So you observe infiltration, interception, stream flow, geomorphology, erosional processes and landforms are engraved in the understanding in Earth Shastra as well. So let's look into the reference of hydrological cycle and artesian wells from different texts. Even Ramayana has these texts particularly, and you'll observe Brihad Samhita, Meghmala. These are the texts that we need to look into. So groundwater development is dedicatedly understood by the scholars during the time of Brihad Samhita. Similarly, in Meghmala, the detail of cloud formation, rainfall and several other things have been clearly given. Then if you observe Earth Shastra again, so in Earth Shastra what you observe, the idea of the water, and also there is something called an instrument which is Varyantra. If you observe this Varyantra, even Kalidasa has talked about Varyantra, and many times in examination multiple choice questions have that who talked about this yantra, which is related to what kind of implement, or what we say is what kind of technology during those times. So remember, Varyantra was basically water cooler, right, during those times. So you observe the Megasthenes, the famous Greek author, also wrote about Varyantra, and the society used it for cooling of air. And Arthashastra gives extensive account of hydraulic structures during the Mauryan Empire. So if you observe few examples, remember reservoir, that is Sudarshan Lake at Girnar in Gujarat. This is one of the Mauryan structures that we keep talking about. So Pines and Ahars, combined irrigation management system that we say was very famous in Mauryan Empire, and also the authors like MacLean and Dawn have written that the Mauryan Empire was first and foremost and also to be supposed to be called as hydraulic civilization because of these water structures they created. Now let's look into something which is very interesting. Water pricing. Have you heard of water being a commodity now? No, the roots are ancient again. Water pricing, water tax. So what's happening? Water management system and taxation. Let's look into Mauryan Empire. And where's the root? Arthashastra. So first one, if you observe, who's paying how much taxes for water? So the manual labor. Look into this Hasta Pravartimam, which basically means has to pay 1/5 of the produce as water rate. Why? Because it's a manual labor. So if you're taking it manually, you're taking more efforts, you have to pay lesser. Then if you go here by carrying water on shoulders, right? Then you have to have 1/4 of your produce to be given as tax. Then if you're carrying it by water lifts, and here is very important, 1/3 of the produce you have to give. And if you're raising water from river, lake, tank, well, 1/3 or 1/4 of the produce has to be given. Look at these water pricing systems. Could it be without the knowledge of hydrology or hydrological science? Of course not. So if you observe, Mauryan and post-Mauryan Empire period have many of these particular water structures. One of them is very famous at Allahabad, the Sringaverapura. So if you observe, this tank was built and on the Ganga river using a particular damming method, check damming method, and it's 250 meters long. Then if you observe here, water resource during Gupta's and post-Gupta period, so you'll find the device called Arghata or Ghati Yantra. Ghata basically means pot, right? So Harsh Charita, Remember, Ban Bhatt wrote Harshcharit has also description of irrigation of the fields using Ghati Yantra. Right? Then if you observe water resources in medieval India. Now come to medieval India, where you will have so many Sanskrit texts again that represent and say that water was again the primal thing. In Vastu Shastra, in hydraulic devices were used, storage systems were built. So if you look Aparajit Priksha, this is 12th century Sanskrit by Bhuvan Dev. Now remember this text where step wells, ponds, water resources and its creation have been mentioned. Then if you observe Brihat Kalp Sutra Bhashya, this is a Jain text which has details of hydraulic devices, various storage systems, irrigation mechanisms at different places. So this is a reference to what we say is evolution of hydrological knowledge from ancient to medieval in India. So you see the times of King Avantivarman of Kashmir, and here you have the Wooler Lake, which is known by Mahapadma Lake and its catastrophic flood. So it was protected by damming the Vitasta river, which is Jhelum river during the ancient. Again, if you observe the writings of Burton Stain, he identifies Pampa Lake. Pampasar. Remember, King Harsha credited with its excavation, and Lalitaditya Muktapid, the famous king, created Lakshadhara for channeling Vitasta river. So here is the map of Wooler Lake and several channels around it. Right? Now if you observe, come to Gujarat and Rajasthan, you must have seen Chalukyas and other dynasties creating so many wells, reservoirs, lakes, wapis, tanks. One of them is this. You see, Rani Ki Vav in Patan, Gujarat, very famous. So here is Solanki dynasty and the creation specifically mentioned. Now look into the works of the Acharya Hemchandra, where Agatti, Unkadi, then you have Dhenka. So the writing is called Desina Mamala, where you will see water drawing devices have been clearly mentioned. The term Bana has been used, Ghati irrigation of the paddy fields have been mentioned. Then if you observe Dhimada, Diklu, Arghata, and all these words in southern Rajasthan very common. Now look into one more thing is, come to South India and look into the reign of Pallavas and Cholas, the very famous empire which had an impact almost till Southeast Asia as well. So if you observe here, the tank irrigation system and Rajendra Chola's work, here you say Chol Ganga tank, and these are the famous one which you observe here, the Viraneri and the Tiriyaneri tank, which is still there. So now what we look into is a summary of all these that we have talked, and here is the list. You can pause the video and you can take this slide as well, that if you want a sequence. Now let's go further and look into the Islamic influence of water architecture. I'm sure you know that Islamic architecture was when Indo-Afghan rulers, and then further you see the Delhi Sultanate and till Mughals, it has a lot of influence on Indian architecture. So it has influence on hydrological understanding as well. The creation of Bauli is very important here. Apart from this, the Adlaj step well, which is famous. So if you look into it, this is Agrasen ki Bauli and this is Adlaj step well, which is very famous here. Right? The Waghela dynasty has created it in Gujarat, if you see. And then what you observe is, come to the Deccan and you see Vijayanagar Empire and its contribution. So if you look into Vijayanagar Empire's contribution here, extensive tank irrigation system. Remember the Pushkarni and Kamalpura tank, the famous ones. These are very famous ones. So remember, don't forget their names. Sometimes in examination you may find a multiple choice question if you're preparing for UPSC. Right? So then you have the Achyutarya's temple water channeling. So if you observe this particular structure, water channeling system was available here. Now comes to the Mughals, and you have seen this kind of structures, hydrodynamics and understanding in Agra's water reservoir, in Shalimar Bagh, which is the contribution. Then further, if you see the great Marathas, and remember Marathas empire was very important for agrarian transformation, agricultural transformation and tank irrigation, apart from creation of the wells and aqueducts. So during the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaja's era, lot of hydrological understanding developed further and lot of creations you'll observe. So you see Raigad Fort, it has still this, it's also called Gibraltar of the East by Europeans. So if you observe here in Sahyadri range, this fort is created and it has a water storage structure. Then further if you observe the famous Kohli tanks. Remember the name Kohli tanks? Tiny group of peasants known as the Kohlis built 43,381 water tanks in Maharashtra. And remember Bhandara, that is check dams or diversion. This structure was created during the great Shivaji Maharaj's era. Now further if you observe British contribution. Now the famous check dams that we say today, where you have the canal irrigation system, and then you have the dams. This is the contribution of British. So in arid regions, they also brought the check dam system capturing rainwater. Bilaspur Dam is very famous. Apart from that, Krishnanand Sagar, Karnataka, Khadagwasla, then you have Periyar, Mettur. All these dams are contribution of the British time, and they converted the dry channels into perennial canals during 19th century, a very important contribution. But remember, they also obstructed the waterways, and hence flash floods also came because of the negative side of this particular. So more flash floods if you tie up the river and if you make more dams. So this is what started here, and then further if you observe, post-independent era, what happened? So after 1947, remember when we got independent, our focus was mainly on agriculture and then on industry according to technology. So Bhakra Nangal Dam, then you have Nagarjun Sagar Dam, Damodar Valley Corporation, and then you have Tehri Dam, Nathpa Jhakri, and several other projects alongside, where you have the multi-purpose river valley project in the understanding. Multi-purpose means irrigation, hydropower, flood control, all these things put in together after independence, and rural water supply programs, that is Accelerated Rural Water Supply Program, ARWSP, came into being. Then further if you observe the contemporary approach, the last 20-30 years, so river linking project, you must have seen these questions in UPSC exam and others as well, interlinking of river, canal and linking of rivers. So here is what we talk about, the interlinking channels and Jal Jeevan Mission, Nal Se Jal Yojana, and several others today. And what is the challenge here? Challenge is groundwater depletion is happening very fast as the population base is growing in India, especially in northern plains. Remember, there are a lot of things happening underground which we don't see in everyday life, but it's affecting us. So you see the rise of packaged drinking water bottles, isn't it? Now the water has become a very scarce commodity already, and we are a huge population-based country. So climate change and its impact is already visible every year, what we see in rainy season, and what's happening with flash floods, what's happening in Himalaya, and community-based water management is the future. So we need to talk about it, we need to focus upon it, right? So I hope that you understood this particular lecture of evolution right from the ancient till the present and the future that we are looking into, the sustainability. And definitely don't forget to like, subscribe the channel, and please do share these videos for maximum outreach. It also encourages me to make more videos for you when more viewership is there. So now, when we have discussed various aspects of the Indian perspective on hydrology, in the sessions to come, we'll be talking more on other aspects of hydrology. So stay tuned, stay safe, and please don't forget to subscribe, and please do share these videos with more and more people around you. So all the best wishes. Take care.